Welcome to Monday, July 9th, everyone. I'm delighted to have back with me Larry Klayman of FreedomWatchUSA.org. Larry, how are you today?
Good, Jason. Nice to hear from you.
It's always good to see you, Larry. There's so much going on in the legal world. You know, people saw last week, just before the 4th of July holiday, of course, we had Imran Awan's plea hearing where he seems to have been given license to skate. What can you say about that briefly before we get into our main topic for today?
Well, that's typical of what's going on in Washington, D.C. and the legal system today, Jason. He probably has information that can be highly incriminating, particularly to the Democrats, to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and to others, and they're covering it up. They're letting him off light. He doesn't really have to cough up any of that information, and that's the sham of our legal system today, covering up for the elites in the Democrat Party and even the Republican Party.
Right. And that's the key, I think, that you've just said right there. A lot of people have speculated that somehow what happened at the courthouse on July the 3rd indicates that Imran has flipped and is going to be somehow testifying against Debbie Wasserman Schultz or Hillary Clinton. That seems like the opposite of what's going to happen. Something like that would have been clear in a written plea agreement, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Now, we know, Jason, look, I started Judicial Watch back in 1994. I ran for the U.S. Senate in Florida. I started Freedom Watch after that. I'm chairman and general counsel of Freedom Watch. I now do at Freedom Watch what Judicial Watch used to do. They just basically get documents today. But I'm bringing hard-hitting lawsuits to try to bring about justice, because we don't have a Justice Department, particularly under Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who's buried his head in the sand because he himself is under investigation by Robert Mueller. But that's the way things work today. And the elites go off scot-free. Hillary Clinton rides off into the sunset. Now there's reports just yesterday that she's going to run again for the presidency. And this is where the American people are, and that's why we're at a stage, a revolutionary stage, where I'm going to try, we'll talk about that later, to do something about it legally and peacefully with citizens' grand juries. But short of that, we're looking at a civil war here, particularly with the left threatening and assaulting conservatives, libertarians, people of faith in restaurants, on the streets, calling for them to be harmed like Maxine Waters. This is where we are today.
It's absolutely crazy what Maxine Waters said and did, where she's basically inciting people to go and, kick people out of restaurants and deny them access to gas stations and whatnot. I don't know if you heard about this story, Larry, but our friend Brandon Straka, who is the founder of this Walk Away campaign, he's a former liberal who decided that he's realized that the left has been lying to him and doesn't represent what he represents, and he was denied service at Adorama Camera Store. I don't know if people are familiar with Adorama, but it's sort of a competitor to B&H Photo. It's owned by Hasidic Jews, and I was shocked to hear that Hasidic Jews would deny a gay man access to their store. I think they might forget how my grandparents and people like them were denied access to shops in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. This is really bad. Even if you don't agree with Brandon and what he is trying to do with his Walk Away movement, I don't think it's a good thing to start kicking people out of restaurants.
I know about Adorama. I'm a photographer myself. If I ever had time, I would do a lot more. That's one of my hobbies. But that's not right to deny that to a gay person just because he's gay, clearly.
Well, I don't know if it's because he's gay or if it's because of his Walk Away movement, but either way, denying him access was, I believe, a PR disaster for Adorama, and I'm looking forward to speaking to Brandon. He's in Europe right now. We'll talk to him when he returns. The one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, and not to distract too much, Larry, because I know we're going to have a big conversation about citizen grand juries, and that's a big deal. Our good friend Laura Loomer has been pushing out this story that Bill and Hillary Clinton were spotted on a flight, a commercial flight, traveling in economy class without the Secret Service, and Bill was reading a book titled, what's it titled? The book is all about child sex trafficking. And this seems really weird to me. Why would the Clintons be flying commercial? Doesn't a former president have lifelong Secret Service protection?
Well, yes. I mean, that report's hard to understand, but he does, and so does Hillary Clinton by virtue of being married to him.
Right.
So I can't imagine that there wasn't someone on that flight from the Secret Service. And as far as the book is concerned, I mean, anything's possible with Bill Clinton. I mean,
right.
The sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And, you know, before we really get underway, I've got a lot of people who've been joining us, Larry, since our last conversation. Crowdsource The Truth is growing really well. We're over 61,000 regular YouTube subscribers. And for people who haven't seen Larry before, I will ask where you've been hiding, because Larry's all over the place fighting for freedom and justice. You can follow him on Twitter at Larry E. Klayman, or you can follow Freedom Watch on Twitter. It's Freedom Watch USA. And of course, the most important link for you to remember is the freedomwatchusa.org website, where you can see all the latest updates. You can donate. It's a 501c3, correct, Larry?
Correct, yes. It's tax deductible.
It's tax deductible. Larry is fighting for freedom and justice. He's got a petition you can sign that will hopefully get Robert Mueller removed as special counsel. We want to appoint Larry as a new special counsel to investigate Mueller. We should investigate Mr. Sessions, who's basically doing nothing. I hope he can get his head out of the sand. But the newest initiative on freedomwatchusa.org is Larry's Justice League, and he didn't just form this in the hopes of meeting Gal Gadot. This is a real effort to bring citizens' grand juries and have people like Mrs. Clinton hopefully finally face the justice that is so rightfully deserved. Larry, tell us a little bit about the citizens' grand juries.
Yeah, well, the reason for the Justice League, you know, it's interesting. I've had to take the plane to Washington, D.C. several times in the last few months. I spent about half my time there, so I had some time to watch a movie, just kind of relax, and I saw this movie, Justice League. And it really stands for the proposition. It's a really good movie. I think people should watch it. I've actually seen it 3 times. I don't usually watch a movie more than once. But what it basically says is that we, the American people, we are the superheroes. We can do it for ourselves. We cannot rely on government to bring about justice. And there's a couple lines in that movie that I thought were particularly great. I'm generally not a fan of Ben Affleck, but I thought he did a good job as Batman. And he has one of these villains cornered from some alien civilization. Yeah. And the guy says to him, "What do you want from me?" And he responds, "Fear." And then there's another line at the end where the evildoer, Steppenwolf, who's trying to take over the world, says to him, "Your people don't know the truth," the superheroes. And he responds, Batman, "We know the truth, and we also want justice." Excuse me, that was Superman.
Right.
But those themes are so important for the American people. It was Jefferson who said that when the government fears the people, there's liberty. When the people fear the government, there's tyranny. And then, with regard to the last line, if I can link that up, is that, yes, what we want is justice. And we're trying to put together a coalition of individuals and groups to bring about justice. So we are going to put together a Justice League because we don't have a Justice Department. It's corrupt to the core with its FBI. The Attorney General is an absolute disgrace. He shouldn't be there. And it's not just him. The ones before him haven't been that much different. And that's why I started Judicial Watch in '94 as a private People's Justice Department. I'm a former Justice Department prosecutor. I know all about the politics. So Justice League, it's a great name. Freedom Watch's Justice League, and that's what we're putting together. And I don't usually walk down the streets in tights, but I thought it would make a point.
It's a great look for you, Larry, and I'm definitely behind this citizens' grand jury movement, I want to encourage people to support Freedom Watch, because these sorts of FOIA lawsuits and citizens grand juries aren't going to form themselves. Larry really does need our support, and if people are so inclined, they should go to freedomwatchusa.org and they should donate to that. Now, Larry, I think everybody knows that you were the founder of Judicial Watch, and I, for one, am sad to hear about the unfortunate breakdown of the relationship there, and I know that relationships break down. Believe me, I've got plenty of them myself. But I'll tell you this, you know, after about 10 years of being divorced, I had become friends with my ex-wife, and we now have a very good relationship. We're able to move past some of that stuff. So I'm going to kind of always quietly be rooting for you and Tom Fitton to bury the hatchet and maybe move together in a way, if that's ever at all possible, because I think both Freedom Watch and Judicial Watch play valuable roles in helping the people of the United States to get justice. So maybe.
Yeah, I understand your thought, and believe me, I've tried over the last years, but it's very difficult because Tom Fitton, who's not a lawyer, always felt very competitive with me when I left, when I ran for the U.S. Senate. He did all kinds of things to try to harm me and my family, and it's beyond the pale at this point, Jason, on that. But let me explain the difference. And by the way, I have a verdict for malicious defamation in Florida, where I was defamed by a Judicial Watch being run by Fitton. But here's the difference between the two groups right now is that Judicial Watch, and I'll give them credit, they do a good job at getting documents. But it's a lot like playing cards. If you're going to play cards and win, you got to put money on the table. And that's what I do at Freedom Watch, because I'm doing the heavy lifting. We get documents, Mueller's communications with the media on September 4th, which will likely show criminal grand jury leaks. It may be the end of Mueller.
Yeah.
And there was a report yesterday in Politico that, in fact, there was a confirmed leak with regard to Paul Manafort. But what I do is file hard-hitting lawsuits. And the citizens' grand jury, Judicial Watch would never do that. They'll never stick their neck out that far. Now, when you go get documents, and you have documents that the media wants, then you'll wind up on Fox News. You'll wind up on Hannity. You'll wind up on Tucker Carlson, on Laura Ingraham, because they want those documents. I'm not interested in getting on Fox News. Okay, first of all, I can't say what I want to say on Fox News because it's censored to some extent. That's why I like being on with you and being on Newsmax and like being on InfoWars, because I can say it straight up. I could never say on Fox News, for instance, that Obama sympathizes with Arab nations that dislike Israel because he's half Muslim. You can't say that, but we know that's the case.
Right.
We know that the birth certificate of Obama is fraudulent, okay? But
Absolutely.
You say that and you're branded a racist. You can't say that on Fox News. So the point is that I have a niche at Freedom Watch. No one is doing what I'm doing, and my colleagues at Freedom Watch. No one is sticking their neck out, risking everything for the American people, bringing hard-hitting cases. It's not just enough to get documents. That's entertainment. We see the Dog and Pony Show on Capitol Hill. We see the Dog and Pony Show on Fox News, and I'm thankful there is a Fox News, but it doesn't go far enough. And they hold out false hope. Hannity holds out hope that something's going to happen. It's not going to happen. That boosts his ratings. But let's tell the truth. There are people on Fox like Judge Napolitano who does, or like Jeanine Pirro who does. But a lot of people there hold out this false hope. Now, the only way that we're going to get justice here, and I don't want to see violence, I don't want to see a civil war, is citizens' grand juries. We have a right to do that. Justice Antonin Scalia, back in 1992, in a case styled the United States versus Williams, said the grand jury does not belong to the three branches of government. It belongs to the American people. We didn't have a Justice Department, Jason, until July 1st, 1870. The people meted out justice, particularly the old. So they would convene a grand jury. If there was sufficient evidence, and you don't need much to indict, granted, they would indict. Then there would be a trial in front of a citizen's court. There would be convictions. There would be sentencing. There would be citizens' arrests. And we are at the point where we have to exercise those legal rights peacefully and legally. And the American people need to rise up. Now, when we choose a grand jury, and we're going to be doing it the next few weeks, we'll choose it from neutral voter rolls randomly, kind of like bingo, okay? So it doesn't look like we're packing the grand jury. Same when we try the cases. We'll get neutral jurors. And we'll see if we can get a retired judge. If not, we'll get somebody else. You don't have to be a lawyer to be a judge, believe it or not. And we're going to mete out justice ourselves. Now, what alternative do we have when you see Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton walk off scot-free for the last 30 years? What alternative do we have when you see a Robert Mueller running roughshod over the president and conducting this witch hunt? And in fact, it's much worse than a witch hunt. Or James Comey, or the directors of national intelligence, James Clapper, and the director of the CIA, John Brennan, who used these mass surveillance capabilities to spy on virtually everybody and to destroy people. And you want to know why nothing happens in Washington?
Why?
Because these agencies that are part of the deep state have dirt on everybody. And nobody's willing to take the risk. So what you see on Capitol Hill is a dog and pony show. Yeah, we get the documents, we'll go on Hannity. Devin Nunes, is a great hero. Fine, great. Okay, you know what? I think he may be sincere, but they're never going to go the final to the end with this. They don't have the power, number one, in Congress. And you've got an attorney general and a Justice Department that's been neutered. The great Republican elephant was neutered. And nobody wants to risk anything in Washington, D.C., because go to Washington these days. Building all over the city, cranes, Southwest. I've never seen anything like this. There's no recession there. The money, the power, let the country be damned. We're going to carry on. And that's why we have a President Trump, because he went there to break up that swamp, to break up the coziness. And that's why it's not just Democrats and Mueller that are trying to destroy him, but the Republican establishment is also stabbing him in the back repeatedly. So the American people need to rise up, because this president, in terms of a president, other than the power of the people, represents us. He's our last hope. And if he's driven from office, the next president is going to be 100 times worse than a Clinton, George W. Bush, or Obama. Believe me. And those last three presidents were absolute disasters. And I tell you that as a conservative, because George W. Bush wasn't much better than the other two.
Right.
And that's why we need to rise up.
And let's stay on that idea for a minute, Larry, because that's really serious. If the deep state is, the shadow government and the deep state, if they're successful in suppressing Donald Trump and exerting their will, they will have shown that they control the United States. I think that Imran Awan hearing from last week is an analogy for what's really going on. The fact that so many serious crimes were committed, and there is such an abundance of evidence that not only was ignored, it was mishandled, it was brought to the defense attorney, Chris Gowan, by the U.S. Capitol Police instead of the prosecuting attorney, Michael Mirando. I called Mirando's office to tell him that I had information to share, and he literally hung up the phone on me. I just want to ask you briefly about that. Wouldn't it been better for him to say, hey, I can't discuss this with you, submit your evidence this way or that? What do you make of the prosecuting attorney refusing to hear evidence that the defendant was guilty possibly of espionage?
That's theater of the absurd, but this is what I'm saying, and it's a good segue, is that Imran Awan has dirt, has the goods on higher-ups in probably not just the Democrat Party, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Democratic National Committee, but congressmen on Capitol Hill, where, at least in terms of the Democrats, he was doing a lot of IT work and that kind of thing. Yes. So, yeah, he can really do a number on them, and these prosecutors, want to cover up. Let's look at what we're dealing with today with regard to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Got a judge up there who is being considered of the D.C. Circuit, Brett Kavanaugh, who, in my view, is the worst of the four, and the other three I think are good, by the way. Mm-hmm. But here's a guy who his entire career has been taking decisions and taking actions to curry favor with the Republican establishment, hoping that someday he'd become Supreme Court Justice. I've had him on a number of cases. With regard to the two cases where we actually preliminarily enjoined the NSA, mm-hmm. the National Security Agency under Obama, the deep state, Ultimately, that gave rise to the USA Freedom Act, which was supposed to create protections to prevent this mass surveillance against the American people. Now, we know that the intelligence agencies, the deep state, continued on and ignored those laws. That's how Trump got wiretapped and others that are involved. So what happened was, at some point, the Justice Department under Obama goes back to court. We took an appeal of certain matters and told the D.C. Circuit, well, now that we have the USA Freedom Act, we don't need these injunctions anymore. And the D.C. Circuit, highly leftist, although ironically the left supports our cases even more than the right to some extent with regard to civil liberties and things like that and not having mass surveillance. But the D.C. Circuit vacated the preliminary injunction, said, okay, they're moot because we now have the USA Freedom Act. Now, Kavanaugh took it upon himself gratuitously, because there was no necessity to write an opinion, to write a totally unauthorized, in effect an illegal opinion saying the mass surveillance was peachy keen. It's fine.
Wow.
Okay? Why did he do that? Because he's currying favor with that element of the Republican Party that believes that police power is more important than civil liberties.
Wow.
And I have to say, my own party, of which I don't represent at Freedom Watch, but personally, really turns me off, because there's a large portion of people in the Republican Party who think that mass surveillance is fine. And in fact, even the president himself, as much as I love him, has gotten bad advice when he did not veto the reenactment of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which lets the intelligence agencies intercept any calls overseas for whatever reason. And he's actually been victimized by that, because that was what dealt with the unmasking. To make the long story short, is that, yes, there's a cabal in Washington, both sides, Democrat and Republican, to protect each other because they're raking in the money hand over fist. They love the power. They all have lunch together. And this is just simply an act to raise money, to go on Fox News if you're conservative or Republican, to go on CNN and MSNBC if you're Democrat and liberal. And it's part of a game. And the American people are fed up with it. I'm fed up with it. And that's why we need citizens' grand juries, and that's why we need to take action ourselves and put the fate of this country into our own legal hands.
Let me take you back to just one other name that you brought up a moment ago, Paul Manafort, because this is such a stark contrast. We're seeing the problem with our justice system on display, really personified in the treatment of Paul Manafort. Here's a guy who's in solitary confinement, never committed a violent crime in his life. The crimes that he's accused of are essentially money laundering or tax related. I'm not directly familiar with the accusations, but it's not like he shot up 1 million people or was giving aid to terrorists. And they've raided his home. They've locked him in solitary confinement. Larry, do you think they're treating Paul Manafort in this way to put indirect pressure possibly on Michael Cohen, who I just learned from your great radio broadcast that people should be listening to on Radio America? You were talking on Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman about how Michael Cohen has hired Lanny Davis, someone who you described as one of the slimiest people in all of Washington. Do you think that Paul Manafort is being treated in this way to send a message to Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal attorney, who would know basically kind of everything about the president?
In part, Jason, yeah. I mean, it's a bigger story. Yeah, they are sending messages. And Lanny Davis is one of the most sleazy people I've ever met in Washington. I mean, you'll see him on Fox News as well as on MSNBC and CNN, this sanctimonious, even-handed approach. But under the table, he's a Clintonista through and through. He's probably the one who lined up Cohen's interview with George Stephanopoulos. They're best friends, BFF. With Stephanopoulos. I sued him back at Judicial Watch. He doesn't like me very much, but
Stephanopoulos
I don't
or
like
Davis?
him very much. And he's a phony. He's a fraud. Okay, so it's very dangerous for the president. And Michael Cohen has him as his lawyer. He has an agenda. He wants to destroy the president. He'll use Michael Cohen to do that. But let's talk about Paul Manafort, because there's a bigger story here.
Yes,
and it tells you about the deep state. Manafort was thrown in solitary by Amy Berman Jackson, this very politicized judge in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. One of the prosecutions against Manafort is in D.C. federal court. The other one is in federal court before Judge T.S. Ellis. Now, Amy Berman Jackson, I don't need to go through it here. I've had her on a number of cases, including wrongful death cases against Hillary Clinton, which she wrongfully dismissed. That case is going to the Supreme Court shortly. She is a political hack. She's a political hack. And she's assisting Mueller to squeeze Manafort. So Manafort turns over evidence that will incriminate Trump. That's the motivation, 100%. Now you've got this judge over in Virginia who made a statement, T.S. Ellis, who's a Reagan appointee, Republican appointee, who said, well, Mueller, how can you even have indicted Manafort because your authorization as special counsel didn't extend to alleged crimes before President Trump even ran for office or was in a transition or was president? It has nothing to do with Russian collusion, obstruction of justice, or anything. And he intimated that he was going to dismiss the case. But in the end, he didn't. And the case is going to trial on July 27th, just in a few weeks. But in the opinion that he wrote, denying the dismissal of the case on the basis that Mueller had exceeded his authority, he has all kinds of dicta. That means arguments that have nothing to do with his ruling, criticizing Mueller. Well, you have to ask yourself the question, who got to T.S. Ellis? Okay, what do they have on him? Why did he lose his nerve? Why didn't he do the right thing and dismiss this against Manafort? Whether Manafort's guilty or not, there was no authority for Mueller to indict him and him to be persecuted like this. And this is a frightening example of the power of the deep police state.
It is.
It's a frightening example of corrupt judges, one who's totally corrupt, Amy Berman Jackson, totally politicized, and then Ellis, who lost his nerve because they must have something on him, or maybe he's just part of the Washington Club, which is another aspect of it.
Right.
So this is what's really frightening about this country. It's why we need citizens' grand juries. It's why we need to put into effect what Justice Scalia said we could do. It's why we need to indict, try, convict, sentence, and undertake citizens' arrests. We need to take the country back. The American people need to do it. And this is the difference between Tom Fitton, who's not a lawyer, and Larry Klayman, who's been a trial lawyer for 40 years. It's the difference between Judicial Watch today and what it was when I ran it, and what Freedom Watch is doing today. I will take this risk for the American people. I ask them to join me as part of this Freedom Watch's Justice League, because we have no choice. This country, in terms of its legal system, is corrupt to the core. We, the American people, must reclaim that legal system and mete out justice ourselves.
Absolutely. And thanks for coming back to the citizens' grand jury topic, because that is going to be what we want to really focus on. It's so important right now, as you've said. I mean, you've called for a peaceful revolution, and of course, utilizing our own legal system is the best way that we can do that. Larry, I had the pleasure of meeting with Judge Richard Posner just the other day with Jared and Elizabeth Beck, and I wonder if Judge Posner might be someone who we could tap to be the judge in a citizens' grand jury. He's very justice-oriented, and he's been vocally outspoken about problems that he sees in the U.S. justice system. He even, I believe, resigned as a Chicago Circuit judge as a result of that. I'm sure you're familiar with Judge Posner. Is there anything you wanted to...
Yes, I've heard of him. And yes, I mean, if we could convince him to do that, that's fine. I don't care whether you're liberal, conservative, or in between. Okay, we don't want to cook the result here. We have enough evidence against Hillary Clinton to put her away for the rest of her life. Okay? And the ultimate punishment would be to put her away with Bill and have them occupy the same cell. Poor Bill, I might add. But we want this done in a correct way. And Hillary Clinton is the poster child of justice. She has skated for too long. She's despicable and corrupt to the core. I call her the wicked witch of the left, not just to disparage her, because that's what she is.
Yeah.
We need to get rid of her broom and send her to prison where she belongs. And she can do no more harm there. So let's start with her. Our other targets are Robert Mueller, James Comey, the former heads of the intelligence agencies under Obama. Obama himself has orchestrated all of this. George Soros, Louis Farrakhan, Maxine Waters.
Yep.
See, and here's another difference between Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch today. You know, Fitton was all over TV last week, and I'm not jealous of that. Fine, get it out there. But that so-called complaint he filed against Maxine Waters, that's a letter, okay? We know the House Ethics Committee is not going to do anything. It'll get you on Fox News.
Right.
Because it's great for ratings. But, you know, if you really want to do something, then you indict Maxine Waters for sedition and causing, you know, harm and threatening people.
Right.
So, you know, that's the way you proceed if you're really in it for result rather than to get your face on Fox News.
And let's get around to that, because I think Judicial Watch and Tom Fitton are doing a good job of raising awareness, but people want action, Larry. Right now, Periscope is asking, how can someone join the Citizens Grand Jury? This viewer wants to join and wants to know how they can help. And of course, I want to hear your answer, but I would presume that the best way for individuals to participate is to donate to freedomwatchusa.org.
Right, and let me clear this up. See, this is the problem I have, Jason, in essence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I have a vendetta against Fitton and Judicial Watch. It's my little baby. I founded it.
Right.
I want it to succeed, okay? Mm-hmm. I want it to live longer than me, okay? That's what I created. But I don't like the people that are running it, and they're not running it in an ethical way, in my opinion. But yes, I want them to succeed. But what I take issue with is this dog and pony show, this entertainment, the scandal entertainment that has engulfed this country and boosts ratings for everybody and raises money for groups. It's not enough just to get documents.
Right.
Documents don't do anything without justice. You use the documents before a citizen's grand jury. You use the documents to bring hard-hitting civil cases.
Well, that's the synergy that I hope to foster.
Yeah, the American people are being offered this false hope when, in fact, they should be told we have to do it for ourselves legally. Right. Peacefully and legally, and that's man up and get the job done and stop playing games with documents, okay? Documents are fine, but in the end, we need justice, and that's what I take issue with, not just with Judicial Watch, but also with Fox.
Yeah,
I think they're helpful to get the information out, but what are you going to do after that? You know, put up or shut up.
And Periscope is asking us now, how does someone like Tom Fitton indict? He's not the DOJ. So that's exactly what we're talking about with the Citizens Grand Jury. And I'm going to do everything I can, Larry, to help you enable that Citizens Grand Jury. I want to ask you another question that's maybe sort of a legal strategy question. It just came up this weekend that Hillary Clinton might be secretly planning to run in 2020. And the question that I have for you is, could this be a maneuver that she's planning, not necessarily with the intention of actually winning, but to create an environment where any Donald Trump Justice Department indictment would appear like a political move to knock out an opponent? Could that be her motivation in doing this? Because I, for one, would love to see her run again and lose again.
Well, you know what, Jason? I agree with you by half there, okay, my good friend.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton knows, she's got 30 years of experience or more, that she'll never be indicted by any government agency, okay? Not even Trump, okay? Because look at Trump. I love the guy. I mean, he's the only president in my lifetime who actually says it straight up what he thinks and what he believes. He talks about the prejudice and injustice in the justice system. He'll criticize judges. They should be criticized, a lot of them. There's some good ones, but most of them are politicized. But Hillary Clinton knows she'll never be indicted by the government. And that's why she's cocky. That's why she'll, in fact, give out these hints that she's going to run again. And she hopes, because the Democrats have no one currently. I mean, Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, Looney Tunes, I forget his name. I'm having a senior moment here. Bernie. Okay, Bernie Sanders. The guy who took his honeymoon in Moscow. Okay.
Did he?
I mean, he's not going to cut it. You've got Joe Biden, who's old and senile. You've got. I could go on and on and on. There's nobody there. Okay. You've got Cory Booker, who's just so hateful. He almost foams at the mouth every time he talks. That's not going to happen. So
don't you think they'll run Michelle Obama?
She can slip in there. Excuse me?
Don't you think they'll run Michelle Obama? I mean, if they had
Michelle
Hillary
Obama.
Clinton with Michelle Obama as vice president, that would be compelling for a lot of people.
Well, Hillary Clinton's telling for a lot of people now. She's not capable of winning, but she has a very large minority, or if not that, a majority in the Democrat Party. She doesn't care about the Democrat Party. She'll take her own party down because she's an egomaniac. I mean, she's a megalomaniac.
Right.
And she doesn't care about that. I mean, this is a woman, Jason, I know this sounds extreme, but 80 people died in and around the Clinton administration. You think it was all law of average?
No, I don't.
You don't think they didn't have some people hit?
And we're not even counting the people.
They did.
We're not even counting the people who died in Libya and some of the other illegal war, acts of war that she was behind through all of her crazy dealings. But let's get back to the Citizens Grand Jury, because people are asking in the comments here, Periscope in particular, is very curious. How do we go about indicting Hillary Clinton? How will this process begin? How will it proceed?
Well, the first thing we do is to pick places where we're going to do it. I previously did a Citizens Grand Jury, but not to this extent, in Ocala, Florida. I'm from Florida, a very conservative place, a Bible Belt. People generally believe in ethics, morality, religious principles. I did it there. Now, we may do it in Ocala again, but I'm thinking that we'll start this in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love where I was born.
Nice.
To make a point and do it. Right across, there's a visitor center from Independence Hall, and nice panorama of Independence Hall. And I think we'll do it there. And Philadelphia is, go to voter rolls. It's not a conservative city. So let's give the benefit of the doubt and let the evidence speak for itself. And then we'll go to a hometown near you and, take it to the country. But this could be a major project by Freedom Watch. We need your help for our Justice League. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
So we pick a grand jury. We present evidence. Okay, I can be the prosecutor. I'll submit the evidence, and then we seek indictments, and then we try it, and we pick juries for the trial, just like we picked it for the grand jury, neutrally from voter rolls. And maybe we'll have a judge like Judge Posner, like you suggested, preside over it. We'll issue subpoenas. If someone like Hillary Clinton and Mueller and Comey don't want to appear, we'll try them in absentia. There's no prohibition to do that in terms of a citizens type trial. And we'll seek to have them convicted, we'll seek to have them sentenced, and we'll seek to have them arrested and put in the slammer where they belong.
How can we enforce that, Larry?
I will not resort to violence, but I think if thousands of people show up in front of Hillary's home and ask her to turn herself in, she might be persuaded. And perhaps we can also have a judge, someone like Posner, issue a warrant for her arrest and have her put in a federal penitentiary or a state penitentiary. So that's the concept here. And look at our founding fathers. Okay? Look at Thomas Jefferson. Look at John Adams. Look at Benjamin Franklin and others. They fought a revolution. Okay, they spilled blood.
Yeah.
And risked their own lives to form a new nation. We don't want to spill blood. We don't want violence, but we want to do it the right way. And it was Jefferson who said that we would have a revolution. He predicted this every other generation.
Yeah.
And this is not something that was unforeseen by our founding fathers. And our country has degenerated to such a degree. And that's why we have President Trump, that the people are beginning to see, and they're seeing it quite well, that our justice system is corrupt to the core. One other point. Look at Israel, okay? There's a witch hunt against Prime Minister Netanyahu right now and his wife, Sarah, who was indicted a few weeks ago. But I got to tell you something about Israel. Their justice system, even though it's run by the Jewish left over there, currently, they have an independent justice department that's not beholden to the executive branch of government in Israel or the legislative branch in the Knesset. And
right.
Israel has thrown prime ministers in prison before, indicting them for bribery. This is what Netanyahu and his wife are being accused of. If you think the American justice system is the best in the world, look at Israel. Look at Brazil, where they've held presidents accountable, indicted them, and thrown them in prison. Our justice system is worse than a bad joke. It's corrupt to the core. And that's why I founded Judicial Watch and later Freedom Watch. I believe in the justice system. I believe in honest judges. I believe in having an honest justice department. I believe in the legislature. We don't have that. We in this country, as much as I love this country, delude ourselves into thinking we're in other countries in terms of our justice system. It's not. We're worse than probably most major countries in that regard. It is a complete charade. It's a sham. And that's why we need the citizens' grand jury. The American people need to mete out justice themselves.
So back on that topic, Larry, so let's say we get a Judge Posner or someone, and he says, yeah, you know what, here's a warrant for Hillary Clinton's arrest. A retired judge still has the power to do that, to issue that warrant, and what law enforcement agency would enforce it?
Well, that's because the power stems from the people, Jason. It doesn't stem. It stems from the Declaration of Independence, which is incorporated into the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution that takes the power away from the people, we the people. So when the justice system under our government breaks away from the people, we have the right to take action ourselves. We don't need the stamp of the so-called Department of Justice. We have the stamp of the Constitution, and we have the stamp of God, okay, which is incorporated into both to do what needs to be done in a just way.
Well, I certainly want to help in any way that I can, Larry. I will bring this to, as soon as you and I are done, I'm going to bring this to Jared and Elizabeth Beck's attention. They're in Florida, and they're in regular touch with Judge Posner, and we'll ask him. As I said, I want to do whatever I can do to help you move this ball forward. And, you know, anyone, we can't just, you know, pick people out of our audience to be a part of the grand jury, because as you've pointed out, that would probably be biased. We want to pick...
No, we don't want to cook it, okay? Look, the evidence is so strong against Hillary Clinton and these other criminals, okay? We don't need to cook anything, okay? And I'd like to have it televised. I'd like to have it, you know, on your station here and other stations. I want people to see what we're doing for transparency. I believe in cameras in the courtroom.
Yes.
Because we're going to do it the right way. And, you know, right now, the American people have their backs up against a wall. They are being disrespected. Their rights are being violated. The justice system is for itself. It protects the establishment, the deep state in Washington. And I'm really tired. I can't say it enough. I'm really tired of the dog and pony show on the cable networks, not all of them, and on in the executive branch, the president being bad advice to head of the Justice Department. But because he's being told don't do anything that's bold, don't provoke Mueller, the Justice Department has become a cesspool of corruption under Jeff Sessions. With the exception of doing a few things with immigration, the guy's an absolute disgrace. So we, the American people, need to form a Justice League. And we, the American people, need to take action. And we cannot be fooled by the entertainment every night that we see on Fox News.
Masquerading as news, essentially. So there are a real lot of people asking how they can help. And of course, the best way that people can help is by going to freedomwatchusa.org and clicking on the donate button. All of the efforts of Freedom Watch, of course, require money, and people need to consider supporting this effort if they want to see something happen. Now, Larry, we couldn't get somebody like Emmett Sullivan to preside over this?
I don't know that he's willing to step out, but look, I don't always criticize Democrat-appointed judges. Emmett Sullivan is a sincere, good man. Okay, he could be stronger, but given where he comes from, a Clinton appointee, let's take our hat off from him. But I do have a number of people, I'm not going to say until I'm able to talk to them, retired judges who may step in and do the job. And in my 41-year career, I have at least a handful of judges that I have great respect for, and some of them are retired, and maybe they would do it, and some of them in Florida, as a matter of fact. So I don't want to give names out. I don't want to put them on the spot.
Sure.
But here's the thing. here's the thing. The world we live in today, this violence that we see of the left, threatening our lives, threatening to our families, being out of Mitch McConnell very much, but, he was subject to this just yesterday, verbal attacks. And look at what happened to the congressman playing baseball in Virginia that they were shot at. And
Scalise, yeah.
So we live in a dangerous world, and we, the American people, need to rise and reclaim it legally and peacefully if we can. And if we can't, then we have our founding in 1776 get to that point.
Your Skype signal is breaking up just a bit there, Larry. People on both YouTube and Periscope are really adamant. They want to know, how can they make citizens arrests? I want to caution people that that could be dangerous, right? How does someone go about making a citizen's arrest?
We're not advocating people take action into their own hands. We're not advocating vigilantism. What we're saying is that once we get a conviction and a sentence, we'll seek to have it enforced. I will not countenance violence or anything that the left is doing, but just the pure power of having the people rule, the pure power of showing up in front of Hillary Clinton's house in Washington, D.C. and saying, turn yourself in, the power of having a judge order the U.S. Marshal Service to take her under arrest and to put her in a penitentiary. This is what I'm talking about. And that's peaceful. That's legal. But no, people should not go out and take matters into their own hands. You have to do this through a legal process, and it must be controlled.
And of course, your recent FOIA lawsuit victory in Judge Emmett Sullivan's courtroom means that come September, FreedomWatchUSA.org is probably going to have a much better Labor Day than, Labor Day or Memorial Day. I always get those two
That's right
confused.
After Labor Day. Now, we'll see if, they hide documents and lie and cheat, steal. There's that possibility. But I'll tell you something. It's funny, is that sometimes there are people inside these organizations that want things to come out, and they stick those documents in there because they actually have a conscience. And I've gotten documents. I'll tell you, right before the war against Saddam Hussein, when I was at Judicial Watch, we got documents from the Department of Defense that were showing that our oil companies under Dick Cheney were dividing up the oil fields in anticipation of overthrowing Saddam Hussein. Someone slipped that into the FOIA request, and that explains, in large part, why we took Saddam Hussein out, which, in retrospect, was not a good idea. And the great irony is President Trump has said, how stupid can we get? We didn't even get the oil after we did all that. So, this is our government today, and has broken away from the American people.
Larry, right now my Skype line is being bombarded by people who think they're cute, calling a million times while we're doing this interview, and I always like to presume that these are random occurrences, but I have to say I don't think so, because the more I interview people like you, people like Kevin Shipp, Robin Gritz, Charles Ortel, people who are actually moving the ball down the field toward doing something, the more crowdsourced the truth comes under attack. So it's really important for the people watching to support FreedomWatchUSA.org, to support Crowdsource the Truth, because, I think something changed for me after Imran Awan got to skate the other day. It just became clear I was holding out hope, despite the things that you've told me and other guests with much more experience in Washington, D.C. than myself. Despite those things, I was holding out hope that we would see something come of all the work we've done as far as getting Imran Awan investigated, indicted, but it's not happening. So the time has come for us to take these legal matters into our own hands. People should donate to FreedomWatchUSA.org. to make sure we have the resources to put together this citizens grand jury. And I would also encourage people to become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth or paypal.me/crowdsource the truth. It's more important than ever, Larry.
Thank you, Jason. You're a great friend and ally. And, you know, we need to hire more lawyers. This is costly. The logistics, for instance, of renting the space across from Independence Hall in Philadelphia. We need security. I mean, it's not random that people are trying to block what we're doing right now. It probably is coming out of the intelligence agencies, the deep state, and elsewhere. Also others are out there. They want to destroy us. Make no mistake about it. Our adversaries would like to see us dead.
Oh, suddenly your connection just got cleared up.
Yeah. Well, you know, they're out there. Okay, and I know that they've gotten into my cell phone. They've gotten into computers of my clients. This is the world we live in today. And it's why, frankly, nobody in Washington, D.C. has any guts. They don't want to stick their neck out too far. Again, it's a dog and pony show on Fox News. Yeah. And it's not for real. And I don't mean to beat up on Fox News. I'm glad that Fox News exists. But I'm tired of seeing false hope to build ratings. I'm tired of seeing the same commentators night in and night out selling their wares. I'm tired of all of it. I'm tired of Congress. I'm tired of the judiciary burying their head in the sand, and I'm tired of Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department running away from a fight because they themselves may be implicated in the Mueller investigation. So we are at a crisis like we've never seen in my lifetime. It's worse than ever. And when a little country like Israel, even if it's not justified, I don't know whether it is or isn't with regard to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife, when they can actually try to mete out justice against the elite, and when the great United States buries its head in the sand and has the people in Washington continue to stuff money into their pockets and be part of this giant club, we are in a serious state of affairs. We're in a crisis. In my view, it's worse than before we signed the Declaration on July 4th, 1776. King George III was an amateur compared to these people that are running our government today in the deep state.
Yes, the tools at their disposal are certainly pretty daunting. Some of them we don't even know the scope of the capability. And, you know, just in our last few minutes here, Larry, I want to bring you around to a topic related to just that. We've heard about how Nellie Ohr was working for Fusion GPS while her husband was in the Justice Department, and there's all these connections between Rod Rosenstein and his wife, and we've got Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother in the U.S. Attorney's Office where Michael Miranda hung up the phone on me. Miranda is married to a woman with the last name Wasserman. I don't know if there's a relationship there or not, but of course also with the DNC server hacking business, the FBI didn't investigate that. It was CrowdStrike. So we've got all of these outside corporations, private companies that are not regulated by the laws of the land in the same way that these specific intelligence agencies are in terms of protecting citizens of the United States from spying and espionage and some of the opposition research type dirty tricks that are going on. And I think there are private companies that are taking action in the form of cyber harassment, cyber intrusions, sharing my phone number publicly, even people that we've seen on YouTube. Can you talk a little bit, Larry, about how these private corporations are used to skirt the checks and balances and the protections that U.S. citizens are normally afforded from intelligence
I will, but
agencies?
before we do that, we've got about 5 minutes left, I can see. Bruce Ohr, that's an interesting story, because back when I was at Judicial Watch, we had someone come to us by the name of Peter Paul. He was the partner of Stan Lee, the creator of Spider-Man.
Oh, right.
And Peter put on a Hollywood tribute to Bill Clinton, which raised about $2 million hard money campaign contributions, which were a violation of the campaign finance laws, okay? And Peter ultimately wound up being indicted. And we represented him at Judicial Watch. I agreed to represent him in exchange for him spilling the goods on Hillary Clinton. Now, who investigated that for the Justice Department? Hillary's illegal campaign contributions? And I don't implicate Peter in this. He didn't know what he did, created that, but they were hard money contributions. We had the checks. We had thank you notes from Bill and Hillary Clinton. Thank you for helping Hillary become elected senator. Mm-hmm. Bruce Ohr was in charge of the crime task force to investigate that. He covered that all up. Now, fast forward decades later, or a decade and a half later, Bruce Ohr is covering things up for Hillary Clinton and going against Donald Trump again. This guy's been embedded in the Justice Department. He's a political hack. He's someone who needs to be looked at. But in terms of what you're saying with private corporations, the intelligence agencies, the power that they have are in private hands as well, and they're in the hands of foreign governments and private entities over there. And it's a real threat to the American people that these kinds of capabilities exist, because if you want to take somebody down in this country and dig up dirt on them, you have a carte blanche to do it.
Yeah.
The means just to do it.
That's right. And so, what I've been doing is trying to diversify our platform. People can catch Crowdsource the Truth videos on YouTube, on Periscope, on Real.video, which is a new platform that was just launched last week by Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. We're also simulcasting all of our live streams, not only on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, but now also on the 21st Century 3D YouTube channel, which people can find just with the short name there, 21C3D. And the experiment that we're doing there, Larry, is we're utilizing Super Chat. So if people want to help support the efforts of Crowdsource the Truth using Super Chat, they can do that at the 21C3D YouTube channel. I would caution people that 30% of your money goes into the pocket of Google, but that's a little experiment that we're trying, Larry. I've been very, very reluctant to monetize my efforts through a large corporation. And I find that anything that I do to monetize brings out these sort of troll responses from people who either really don't understand that doing anything like what you and I are doing takes money, takes time. We require food, office space, electric bills, things like that. Everybody needs money to keep these efforts going. So definitely want people to choose the method that suits them best. And
that's right, Jason. It's very, very expensive what we do. And, there's a certain population, our supporters, that try to help us out. We're very thankful and very grateful for the support, but we need more support because we really need to ramp up. And, of course, during our first revolution in 1776, it was a handful of colonialists and founding fathers that rallied the troops, so to speak. And that's what we're trying to do under Freedom Watch's Justice League. That's what you're doing at Crowdsource the Truth. And, you're so important in what you do at Crowdsource the Truth because you let me tell it like it is. I cannot do that on Fox News. I can't do it.
I appreciate that about you so much, Larry. I always enjoy having you on the program, and I definitely want to encourage people to donate to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up for the Freedom Watch Justice League. I don't know if Larry will send you a spandex jumpsuit, but perhaps you could get one of your own, and we could put Freedom Watch stickers on the front of that, and we could have our own Justice League running around. Larry, people can also listen to your radio show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, and that can be found at Radio America. I believe you also post those shows onto your Freedom Watch YouTube channel so people can listen to that. It's always great to hear the rundown from Larry. He has great guests, sometimes including me and others. Larry, anything you want to share with us before we wrap it up for today?
Well, one basic thought, and that is we, the American people, it's time for us to rise up and do it for ourselves. I'm not just talking about documents or going on TV. I'm talking about real, hardcore action. So join us at freedomwatchusa.org. Join our Justice League. You are the superheroes. You, the American people, are the superheroes.
That's right. And today will be looked back upon as the day that I threw my hat into the ring to start fully supporting the effort to form citizens' grand juries and to really take these matters from a legal standpoint into our own hands. I really want people to go to freedomwatchusa.org, support Larry, support Freedom Watch. Larry, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Look forward to our next discussion, and have a great day.
You too, my good friend. God bless.
Take care. Thanks for watching, everybody.